another episode of Flipping Tables, Season 2. Today we're going to be starting a new series. We want to be talking about fasting. It's a key thing in the Christian walk. So we want to ask some questions to one another and hopefully give you guys some answers. We're going to jump into it.
Fasting. What is fasting? What kind of fasting? What do you do? What is it really about?
A lot of questions.
It's a lot when you start diving into it, you know. And I got my views on it, but I want to get started off on yours, and I'll kind of like give you mine in a second. But what is fasting? When you hear the word fasting, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Yeah, honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is not eating. That's the first thing that comes to mind. I'm not eating.
It's sacrificing.
Yeah, that exactly. But I think as I've grown older, definitely started to change perspectives because I think especially when I was younger and we used to fast, and it wasn't like I was doing it on my own, but we would do it as a congregation, right? I would use the opportunity to take it as like a diet. All right, this week I'm gonna eat healthier, right?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be eating all this junk food, and I would treat it almost like a diet. But fasting is not a diet,
Of course.
right? So for me, fasting is giving up something, sacrificing something, and using that time to connect with God. As I gotten older, there's a bunch of different fasts that you can do, but the one that I normally do the most is like the Daniel fast, where I'm not doing animal products and products, right? But animal food like meat, chicken, eggs, milk,
So
anything that
like,
comes.
it's basically like grains. Stuff
Yeah,
that comes
so
off
like
the ground.
vegetables and things like that. So you're still getting your food, but it's sometimes you're a little hungry,
When you like the protein,
right? So, but using that time where, you or maybe skipping breakfast, right, and not having that, but using that time to be intentional and to spend it with God. So in prayer or reading His Bible. So substituting that you were doing, eating, whatever, with God.
I'll jump into to what I believe fasting is, right? Because in our walk, we believe that we are made of three parts, right? The spirit, the flesh, and then of course our soul, right? So the one thing that I've learned when it comes to fasting is that the idea of fasting is really about you weakening your flesh, allowing yourself to be able to connect easier or to grow when it comes to your spirit. And I feel like when it comes to fasting, a lot of people kind of lose the whole idea of what this is about. The idea is, one, to weaken your flesh, and two, to grow spiritually. So when people say, it's like, hey, Fernando, what do you think about fasting? It's like, I'm going to be real with you. I don't fast a whole lot. And when I do, it's very selective, like how long I'm going to do it, why I'm going to do it. It's like, I do it when I have a purpose to do it, Now, I love to hear about people who like do it consistently. In the near future, we're going to get some folks to join us and kind of give us their insight on what they're doing. But for me, it's like, it's a very difficult thing, like I'm built different, so like for me to skip a meal,
You need some protein.
Yeah. For me to skip a meal, it's already bad enough as it is, For me to skip 2 meals, now you're just, you're risking it all, by asking me to skip 2 to 3 meals, let alone going 2-3 days without it, Now I've done it a couple of days, and for me, again, it's very difficult. I'm the type of guy who I eat protein. I eat meat with every meal. It doesn't matter if it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I have to have some sort of meat with it. So giving it up, I know going into it, like I gotta get mentally prepared. If someone says, "Hey, we're doing it this weekend," I'm like, "Ooh, you're doing it this weekend,"
I'm not ready yet.
We use a lot. But it's like, if I get mentally prepared for what I'm getting ready to do, then I align my fasting with my prayer. And I want to make sure that the time that I would normally spend eating, I'm going to allow that time to like eat, spiritually speaking. You know what I'm saying? To like kind of get into the word, to pray, to try and connect with God more. And I'm going to tell you right now, for those people who try to fast without doing that, it must be even harder for you. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to do it on your own. And then for me, it's like, I want to say it's almost like that out of sight, out of mind type of thing. Where if I'm not thinking about it, sometimes I can skip 2 meals while I'm at work, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I'm so busy, I'm so doing so much. I'm like, oh
You
snap, it's
forget to be
5:30.
hungry.
You know, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah. So I feel like it's the same thing when I'm I'm involving myself
Yeah.
with things that I would do, whether it's a prayer, a devotional,
Mm-hmm.
singing, worshiping, whether it's something different, right? But
Yeah.
not just to concentrate. Oh, I gotta go eat. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I want some chips. I want some ice cream. Those are the easy ones to get. But to say, hey, I'm gonna skip a whole meal,
Mm-hmm.
that's what gets a little tougher.
No, it's tough for me too. Like I don't do it a whole lot either. I think it's something that slowly but surely is starting to reveal
Develop. Yeah.
itself to me, right? Like I should do this more
Yeah.
and the purpose behind it. Before, like I said, I would do it because it was a congregation thing and I wanted to join in, but it wasn't like so much and I wasn't replacing that time
Yeah.
where I would have been eating, spending it with God either.
Yeah.
So I remember like thinking, like you just said, which is a good point. You're filling yourself spiritually. You're eating spiritually, but it's not the same as you eating food, right? Because you get full.
Yeah.
Now, spiritually, you'll get full, right? Spiritually, you start to mature and you start to grow, but you're still gonna be hungry.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the reality. So I'm like, how are people getting full by reading the Bible and praying? Like I didn't get that. I was
Yeah.
literal with things, right? But it's not literal. Like you're still gonna be hungry, but you have to sacrifice that to feed your spirit. And I remember talking to one of the pastors that came. He was a guest pastor for the last youth retreat, Pastor Heidel.
Yeah.
Shout out Pastor Heidel.
Oh, more grace.
Um, so he told me that he fasted for 40 days on water,
That's wild.
like no food, water. You know, and that's mind blowing. That's like that's discipline, And he said that he grew a lot
Yeah.
spiritually, where he connected a lot with God. And even hearing that, I was still a little hesitant. I was like how it doesn't really make sense.
Like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah,
40
like
days without
how?
food.
Yeah, like how does that make sense? Like you gave up food, and I was, but because he's spending that time with God, that's
Yeah.
why he's connecting with God. If you're spending time with somebody a lot more, you're gonna start to know, their intentions, their goals, how they see the world. You're gonna start to get to know them.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, oh wow, okay. Then I started to get why fasting is important and things like that. But if you're not spending time, I think it's important, right? If you're not spending time with God, and what you're really doing is just killing yourself because you're
Yeah.
like, I don't want to say it like this, but you're really just kind of punishing yourself by not eating. You could have been
Starvation,
yeah,
right?
you're starving yourself, really, so because you're not feeding your spirit and you're not feeding your physical body either. So,
Yeah, and it's one of the things like that sometimes I kind of comes to mind is like I'm gonna just throw that one out there, right? I've seen it a lot where folks are like, "Well, I'm gonna give up meat," but then they go and they serve themselves like 10 times the vegetables that they would
Oof.
normally eat
Yeah.
once, and you're just like, "Hold on, you don't even eat salads, and all of a sudden you got a salad bowl
No,
that's
no
huge."
salad.
Just like you're it's defeating the whole purpose of what you were doing. It kind of goes back to what I said earlier, where it's like if you're deciding to leave food, is because you want to weaken your flesh.
Yeah.
But if you're just gonna supplement with something else, or the type of folks who are like, oh, I'll just make myself a fruit smoothie, but I'm not eating anything. Just putting 6 pounds of fruit into a blender and then chugging it. I mean, the same difference,
6 pounds.
all you did was save yourself chewing time. You know what I
Right,
mean? So
right.
it's like, what did you really do at that point? I always just kind of like sit around. I'm like, I kind of keep to myself most of the time, but hey, when we're flipping tables, we might as well
Yeah.
let it all out here, right?
Call 'em out.
It's like, what do you get out of it? Like, what's the point? Just so you can tell someone to do it?
Right.
Kind of takes me to the next one I want to touch on, right? When you fast, is it something that you tell folks? Is it something you keep to yourself? How do you go about it?
Yeah, personally, I think it depends, right? It's a little hard because, of course, with the workplace and things like that,
Yeah.
sometimes like I'll have coworkers, let's go get lunch. And you want to go hang out with them because you always go get lunch with them.
Yeah.
But I think it's not in the sense like I can tell them like, or I can tell them, hey bro, I'm not gonna get anything because I'm fasting right now.
Yeah.
But I think what the Bible says, and we see it in Matthew 6:16, where pretty much the point is don't make don't make it seem like you're fasting.
Yeah.
Don't try to get pity out of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't shower. I look,
Mm-hmm. All
like
beat
a
up.
hobo because I haven't eaten
Yeah.
in 3 days, right? Like, don't look like that. Fix yourself up, get, dress nice, smell good, shower, comb
Yeah.
your hair, brush your teeth,
Yeah.
like do everything as you would do on a normal.
You're not just gonna lay on the fetus
No.
position on the floor like, oh, I've been fasting
I'm
for 3
hungry.
days.
Yeah,
I'm
like,
starving
come on.
myself.
So I think it depends. If your motive is to try to get pity out of it
Yeah.
and be like, oh, look at him, he's holy because he's fasting, like,
Yeah.
then no, right? But if, like, in my case, in my example, where it was like my friend is like, yo, let's go get lunch.
Mm-hmm.
I can't, bro. Like, and why not? Why not? I'm fasting, bro. Like,
Yeah.
just to let you know. So but I think it's in the sense of like, don't try to get pity out of it.
I mean, there's a Proverbs, right, that says it says don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing,
Mhm,
right? And to me, when I hear that, or I think about this scripture, as like it's basically saying it's like there's no need to boast about what you're doing, and kind of like what
Yeah.
you're saying, right? But at the same time, sometimes folks tend to be like, they walk in and like, hey, you want somebody to drink? Oh no, because I'm fasting. It's
Mhm.
like, all right, cool. Like I can
Right.
see, if it's my son
Right.
letting me know, hey, like I know you're cooking dinner. I've been fasting today, so you don't have to make it. He's letting me know because he doesn't want me to,
To offer it
to cook a $15
or
steak.
to fix him a plate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to fix him a $15 steak, and he's not gonna touch it. He's like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm off of it today. So stuff like that, I can see it. But sometimes I'll see people who are like, no, guys, I'm not gonna go. And like you said, like they'll announce it to the whole world and say, like, no, I'm good today. And earlier I made mention of something, right? Where it's like what you would have done normally on that lunch to hang out, to go have
Mhm.
fun, eat, and do everything. Okay, well, by skipping out on that one lunch, be like, hey, not today. I'm good.
Mhm.
By you're allowing your soul to not have fun,
Yeah.
to not you know indulge in hanging out and putting all that time into it. You're also not letting your body feast, but at the same time, you're taking away from that. In me, like me thinking out loud right now, it's like my ideal thing would be like, okay, I'm giving up my lunch break, but I'm gonna go have a quick devotional
Yeah.
in my office, and I'm
Right.
gonna just like
Mhm.
do me right really
Mhm.
quick. So to me, it's like learning that at the end of the day, God doesn't want sacrifices, but He does want obedience,
Obedience.
right?
Right.
And being able to do this because you love Him, being able to do this because you want to draw closer to Him, and having the right mindset to do it, I think that's what really separates everyone.
Mhm.
The moment that you're like, oh no, I'm just doing it. And by the way, I lost 8 pounds this week, and it's
Right.
like, hold on, like
What was
why?
the real
Like,
purpose behind
what
it?
was the
Yeah. Yeah.
reason?
Yeah.
It's like what are you really going for?
Yeah.
Like you lost 6 pounds, you lost 5 pounds, you're monitoring your weight while you're doing it. That's like that gives me different whole different message
Yeah.
coming out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, and I like that you said that because um I think if you're starving yourself or you're, withholding something back and you said something about your flesh, like not making your flesh suffer, but
Yeah.
like you're weakening your flesh, right?
Exactly.
To make yourself more vulnerable, right? And when you're more vulnerable, that's when you can connect and you can
Yeah.
open up and be real with God. And that's
Yep.
when God's gonna really like come in. And so I think it's important to do that because we all put up barriers,
Right.
emotional barriers, mental barriers, physical barriers, spiritual barriers, right? Where we're like, all right, God can't really do it. But when we start to weaken ourselves and open and become more vulnerable, then then that's when we start trusting God,
Yep.
you know? And so I think it's key. I mean, even that just taught me something. Because again, I'm not a big fan of fasting. Or I don't do it as often,
Yeah.
but it is something that I'm conscious about, and I'm like, I should do it. But again, I don't want to do it with the wrong purpose. We talked about purpose, and I wanted to share something because, one of the questions was, what motivated you to do the fast
Yeah.
or to start fasting? Like, what was the purpose behind it, right? So, is it a prayer that you have, like a petition that you have, and you want God to answer it? Or are you fasting because, like you said, you love Him
Yep.
and you're just being obedient to what His word says,
Mm.
right?
I feel like sometimes, or let me say it. I don't want to say sometimes about everybody. I'll talk about myself. Because, like I said, I haven't always fasted. And sometimes I hear like everyone saying, oh, the whole church is doing it. And people get really pumped up about it. And I've been in the construction field and sometimes I'm doing different things, right? But when I'm all like going all out and doing physical labor, I'm like, I can't afford to weaken myself right now.
The
Like
physical
the
body.
physical aspect of it, you know? But I'll do things like I'll turn TV off, stay off, my phone. And instead of tracking my weight, what I am tracking is how much screen time I've been on that week, to minimize again what I'm doing. But my purpose is like, okay, I want to get to another level. I want to do something different this time. I don't want to be the same person next week. So when my purpose is that, it gets to a point where it makes it easier for me to pick and choose. Like, okay, today I'm giving that up. Today I'm giving that up.
Yeah.
And then like the following month, 2 months later, when someone brings it up, I'm like, you know what? I gave up that. So, and that was easy. So gradually you start adding more to it, and the idea is not to try and give everything up. It's kind of like, I always tell folks, it's kind of like when you're wanting to lose weight. No pun intended, right? But it's kind of when you want to lose weight and all of a sudden you decide, well, like, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to go buy a bunch of different clothes just so that I can work out. And they're like, and I'm going to buy dietary supplements and I'm going to buy some creatine and I'm going to buy whey protein. And like you start spending mad money. You go for a week, 2 weeks, maybe. And then
you don't stick to it.
Not to mention you lost like 8 pounds, but all of a sudden, because you didn't stick to it, now you gained 14 back. You know what I'm saying? It's like, sometimes you try to do the most and that's not what we have to do. You can do a lot and you can be productive without just saying, okay, let me just completely flip the switch and try to see if I can go in a different direction. Sometimes it's better to do little by little. I always tell folks, it's like, instead of doing a diet, why don't you look for a different lifestyle? Something that you are like, something you enjoy, something you can do, and just do it differently. Be active for 20 minutes a day. Walk for 15, 20 minutes a day.
Those little changes make a big difference. Yeah.
All of a sudden you start to see it. All of a sudden you're like, okay, well, if I'm going to walk today, maybe I'll run for 15 minutes. But you're already used to being outside for 30 minutes. So just because you made it a faster pace, now you don't feel it. Now you're in the habit of going out, right? I feel like it's the same thing that you can do when it comes to your spiritual life. If you have a devotional 5 minutes every day, it's better to have a 5-minute devotional every single day than to have one that's 2 hours long and then you want to call it a Sunday service.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? That's not the same thing, So it's like when you're going to address fasting and you're going to address your relationship with God, it's like your devotional could be a 5-10 minute thing. And when the seasonal thing, like yearly thing where the whole church is fasting, you'll be like, all right, let me take it to another level. But now something that you've been doing for 20 minutes, for you to go do it for 4 to 6 hours, it's not a huge leap. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's levels to it. And for me, I'd rather not say, hey, I'm going to go 2 weeks or 3 weeks without food. I'm going to drink water. It's like, I'm not at that level,
Yeah.
And granted, folks are going to be like, well, Fernando, you're youth pastor now. It's like, yeah. And I'm still growing just like everybody else needs to grow. It's like we're still putting in work. It's not like we ain't there yet, But I think that's the more important thing, is that to acknowledge where you're at and then to set yourself up to like continue to grow.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of something. Maybe our next point is like, can you only fast food? Right? Because I mean, I've done social media fasts and things like that, and I'll be honest, like when I jump off of social media, it feels good for a week, 2 weeks, and like I don't miss it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I even feel better, right, spiritually, because there's so much on social media now that's it's crazy, right? So your eyes are not seeing that. You're not looking at different things, like the culture, and the culture's not infiltrating you and, tempting you and things like that. So I feel great, but it's not really a struggle for me.
Yeah.
So for kids, maybe that might be a way of fasting, but for me, that's not a real fast. If I'm being real, like I don't think that's like when people are like, oh, I'm going to fast the TV, or I'm going to fast video games, or I'm going to fast, I'm like, to each their own, but I wouldn't consider that a real fast. But
I wouldn't say that it's not a real fast, because again, like for me, it's like I can't weigh your heart and figure out what your true intentions
Mm-hmm,
are
mm-hmm.
behind it. You know, I'll give you a very specific one. For me, I know that music is a weakness for me. So when I'm in my car, I don't even put the radio on,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's like Christian music. Like there is times where sometimes I'll put my Spotify on and it's like a certain channel, like whatever worship music, and all of a sudden it's like, hold on,
Christian.
that doesn't sound very Christian. I'm like, what is this? You know? And I'm like, skip. And it's like, I can skip you too. And all of a sudden it's like, let me just refresh my channel and I have to go back and start the channel all over.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like it happens a lot. So because I know it's a weakness of mine, I'm not the type of person to just randomly put any channel of music on because I know myself, you know? Before you know, I'm gonna be bobbing my head. And I was like, it wasn't that bad of a song, but it's okay. I can like it and I'll keep it on my playlist. So in order to avoid all that completely, I don't surf different channels for music,
Mm.
right? So that's just me thinking out loud, right? Now, when it comes to can you fast other things? Yes, you can if you know that those are weaknesses of yours, right? If you're saying like, "Hey, God, this is a weakness of mine. I'm bringing it to your feet," that is a game changer because you're accepting that it's a flaw of yours
Mm-hmm.
and you're willing to allow God to show His strength in you through that flaw,
Right.
right? So to me, it's like, yeah, you can do different things besides food, but the truth of the matter is like, and it's something that you have to answer yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? The
Mm-hmm.
question really realizes like, what's the purpose behind what you're doing, and what's your goal
Yeah, the
behind what you're
motivation.
doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like if you're just motivated because like, I just want to give something up because everyone else is giving something up. I'm sorry, like
Or
you
a
could
quick
just
little diet.
yeah, like you know what I'm saying? Because you want to lose a couple pounds. I'm like, if that's what motivates you, then by all means, I'm sorry. I mean, like, just don't waste your time. I mean, do your diet. I mean, whether you lose weight or you don't, ain't got nothing to do with me, you know. But at the end of the day, it's like, what's the point?
No.
You could have lost weight some any other way without having to starve yourself.
Exactly.
That's just the truth.
Exactly. Now, are you praying for something specific when you're fasting? Or what, like, we already talked about having a devotional, setting that time apart for God. But like,
Yeah.
what should we be praying for? What should be the aim?
So this kind of goes back to the type of relationship that you have with God, right? I'm gonna just say it like this: if the only time that you're praying is when you're fasting, you're in a lot of trouble, right? Because at that point, you're just bringing a whole bunch of things that you want to ask God for, and you got your whole checklist, and you're hoping that you can throw 40 items in it, and you might get 2 and 3, and you might be happy with that. You know,
Mm.
for me, when when I have fasted, I've been very purposeful on what I'm asking for or what I'm looking for, and most of the time, it has been for answers. You know, one of the biggest things, and I don't know how much time we have left on this episode, but I'm gonna take up the time. But anyways,
Okay.
I'm gonna take it anyways. One of the things that me and Kenya went through that was really tough several years back. I probably shouldn't have even brought this up, but I'm gonna say it anyways. I I ran over my son with my truck. Some people know this already
Mhm.
about us, right? And I ran over my boy, and this was right in front of church. And won't get too much into details what happened to that night, right? I don't know if people are gonna want to know now, but the point is that I literally ran the wheels over my boy, and God was good, protecting my boy. My guy came out of the hospital, no bruises, no broken bones. Um, but God spoke to us that weekend, and He basically answered a prayer that my wife was kept a concern that
That.
she had in her
Mhm.
heart. You know, and her heart was because my son obviously has special needs. Her concern was like, okay, what's going to happen to him after we're long and gone?
Yeah.
Like, who's going to take care of him? Who's going to like look out for him and all this other stuff? And on that weekend, God really spoke to her like verbally, like it was a verbal
Answer.
answer
Mhm.
from not just one person, but from multiple people. And it was word for word. They were all sharing the same comments, right?
Mhm.
And he basically said, "Look, he's been watching our kids since before birth,
Mhm.
since he was in the womb." And he basically said, "Hey, I'm protecting him and I'm watching over him. You have nothing to worry about. He's gonna be fine."
Right.
And the crazy part about it, this happened several years back, and a couple folks that witnessed it, and my pastor's wife was one of the persons that God used to verbally give those confirmations to my wife, saying, "Hey, this was a prayer of yours, and God has an answer for you, and this
Yeah.
is your answer." Well, this last couple of days, we got call from the school, and they said, "Hey, we don't think that he's gonna be in special needs anymore.
Wow.
Like he's on pace to not just go and get a certification. Like he's on pace to actually go to high school, graduate from high school, and possibly even go to college." And they told us like the way that he's testing, he could easily make it into like an engineer degree. You know,
Jeez.
it's like so to hear that type of news. I mean, this is not something that I was like, God, please give me an answer right now. I
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
know what's
yeah.
going to happen. Where's he going to be at? Like, and I need it now. It wasn't that. It was more of a like a petition, like, hey, this is our concern. This is what weighs heavy on us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we bring it to your feet, and you let your will be done. You know. So, but when we see this and years go by, and all of a sudden you get, news like this,
Yeah, yeah.
you're like,
He's
truly,
getting ready to go into middle school, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point, you're just like, the Lord is truly loyal.
Mm-hmm.
He is faithful to what he says he's going to do, and it's like having to trust him sometimes is difficult. For me, fasting is a way to build that bond and to build that relationship with him so that I can fully trust in
Right.
everything that he's saying, everything
Yeah.
that he's doing in my life.
I like that because I had something, I looked it up, and it said this: fasting should not be used to pressure God into doing someone's will.
Hmm.
So you're not doing it like you say. I'm bringing you all these petitions. Do it. Answer my
Yeah.
petitions. Grant my
Yeah.
wishes.
Come through for me,
I'm fasting.
Yeah.
You know, but it says, but rather to ensure that someone is doing God's will.
Amen.
So you're fasting. You're giving this up. You're communicating with God to realign yourself with,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, his purpose for your life.
Yeah.
It's not for him to be like, oh yeah, like you said, God prefers obedience over
Yeah.
sacrifices, right? So if you're doing it so God can answer your petitions and grant you your wishes, that what you're doing is sacrificing
Yeah.
things in order to get an answer, to
Yeah.
get something back in return. But if you're doing it in obedience, you're realigning yourself with his will for your life.
And sometimes it's not so much of asking for something or getting answers. Sometimes you just need the strength.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just need to be like re-energized, and sometimes you just got to get refocused. I remember the first time I gave a Bible study that I shared a lesson. I was I started off good, but halfway through it, I was like super nervous, and I'm starting to get nervous, and all of a sudden, we're at a pastor's basement. He comes down and he sits right in
Ooh,
front of me, and
more pressure.
I was just like, really, like right now? And I kid you not, like I got like dry mouth. My lips started sticking to my teeth, and I was just like, "What in the world?" And I see a water bottle. I start chugging the water bottle, and I was like, "Well, it is what it is," And I kind of just opened up and finished. I'm only sharing that because that night I got a word from God. He said, like, um, he said, "I see your heart and I see your intentions." He's like, "And if you take care of my people and my kingdom, I will take care of
Mm-hmm.
yours."
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like and I was just like, what does that even mean? But throughout the years, I've seen God's hand and in my life at times of need, things that I'm not expecting just all of a sudden happen. And when it's that, and you still like, how does this, sometimes you don't see the full picture. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you're still pushing, you're still
Mm-hmm.
working.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it gets to a point where you're just tired. So sometimes fasting or sometimes just, setting a whole day just to be in his presence, it's really not about like, oh God, I need this, I want this, and I want that, and I want, and give me, give me, give me. It's not about the gimmes, right? Sometimes just like, I just need to take this load
Load off.
off. And scripture says it, right? All ye who are heavy laden, heavy burden, come to me and I will give you rest, right? So sometimes it's just about like, let me just set all this at your feet so that I can get some rest, so that I can like re-energize myself and I can keep on grinding. And that's really sometimes, to me, that's really the key.
Mm-hmm.
If that's really your purpose, if that's really what you're aiming for, God always comes through in that aspect.
Of
When
course.
it comes to like, oh, I have like 6 different things that I need you to check off my box, you're lucky if you get one of those checked off. That's just a reality. And most people tend to get so disappointed when one of those boxes didn't get checked off. You know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
the sad part.
Yeah, because they're doing it with the wrong, at the end, the wrong motivation, wrong
Yep.
purpose. Like I said, they're doing it to get something in return instead of connecting with God and growing spiritually, getting spiritually filled.
Yeah.
Right. So it's something, again, it's something that even to me, it's is continuing to like be revealed, you know, and I get more and more understanding from it even now.
Yep.
You know, it wasn't something that I didn't it was something that I didn't fully understand, you know, even like till when was the last retreat? Like 2 years ago,
Yeah.
right? That I even asked Pastor Hyder, I was like, why? Why do we even fast? Like, I don't get it. Why should I give up food? And how is me giving up food helping me connect with God?
Yep.
It doesn't make sense to me. But then when he broke it down, I was like, okay, I get it, you know, and doing it in obedience instead of a sacrifice.
Yeah.
You know, we're not the Israelites back in the desert, you know, that they had to do sacrifices to a peace offering and do all this and that. Like we're in a different time. So I think with that we're gonna wrap it up. Hopefully next episode we have a guest that can share a little bit more about, you know, their fasting and their purposes and their motivations and maybe a little testimony.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Maybe a little testimony, a little bit of structure on how they go about doing it. Because God knows I could use a little help on
We both get
on working on my fasting, you know. And the crazy part is, like, sometimes you see all these things, and instead of inspiring you to do it more, you're just like, I'm gonna just keep doing me.
like, never mind.
Like, what's the point of doing all that?
Yeah, I was thinking like it's Christian. It's one of the things in the Christian walk. You know, it's not everything, but it is a important part. You know, just like praying is important, just like serving is important. You know, just like congregating and having fellowship is important, and tithing and all that. Like it's not just everything. Fasting is not just everything, but it's an important part to your spiritual life.
Yeah, and obviously, like, we're gonna get into the next episode where you see a scripture mentioned how certain aspects of your spiritual battles can only be done through fasting. So that's going to be a big one. That's definitely something we can touch a little bit more into.
Of course. Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and comment.
Hit that notification button on there so you guys always know when we're dropping new content, and stay connected.
Yeah, and if you guys have any questions about fasting, or if you guys want to share any comments about fasting, please go ahead and do so. See y'all later.